Hello, welcome to one more review. This is the review of The Brutalist. I'm going to start with a warning about spoilers, okay? If you do not wish to have the experience of watching the movie spoiled for you, stop looking at this now. Alright, you had your shot. The reason for my immediate warning is because what I'm about to say will pretty much take away the joy of finding out why this movie was named. Well, I can't tell you with 100% certainty why it was named that, but I can give you some options of where you can go with this, right? It is conjecture. It is what I think. So it's not really an official answer, but it might open doors for you to think for yourself, okay? Addressing the elephant in the room is important. Otherwise, I would have left it for last. So here goes. As much as one would jump into the obvious assumption that it must be due to brutalist architecture, as a literature professor, I will always dig through the layers of what seems to be clear and find symbolic value in what is being shown on the screen. Symbolic value is very important for literature professors, especially if you also write yourself. I love writing. So yeah, at first glance, it could be pretty obvious to people, okay, well, the brutalist type of architecture, that's what they're exploring here, so that's why they're calling it the brutalist. In my humble opinion, as a writer who has been watching movies for almost 50 years and who has studied and taught literature for over 3 decades, I can safely say that the title is the brutalist because this noun is a euphemism for rapist. Most people would feel put off or downright offended by a motion picture named The Rapist. I think we can all agree on that. Nonetheless, a great deal of us who went and saw The Brutalist were most likely expecting brutality and violence. Naming a film The Brutalist will give the audience a heads up about how brutal it can possibly get. Right? Right. Well, that's how I think anyway. I could be completely wrong. When I looked at trondheimkino.no, I learned the runtime of this movie is 25 minutes short of a whopping 4 hours. Only Gone with the Wind beats this movie for the longest I have ever sat through. Nevertheless, there is an intermission of 15 minutes during which people can stretch their legs, go to the toilet, or like one of the people in the screening room at Nova Magique, shoot, this afternoon, go to Burger King and get a chicken bacon with fries to eat in the theater during the last part of the movie. Enough about this for now. Adrien Brody was spectacular, as it would be expected, since I watched him in that movie wearing a Huskadoo t-shirt all those years ago. You have to know Adrien Brody's filmography to know what reference I'm making here. And I'm not saying by any means that everyone needs to know. You don't need to know, but I'm just saying for you to understand what I mean, you would have to have seen some of his movies, that one in particular. He played a psychopath in that one. And I was appalled by his presence the entire time. And I reckon if you're going to play a psychopath, you have to make the viewers very uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're not doing your job as a psychopath. So yeah, so I expected him to be good because I had watched that movie. And just his name, he's a big name. He's an A-lister for sure. And I was expecting him to be good. I had admired his work as an actor. The solid skills one looks for in a performance that will entertain an audience and keep them at the edge of their seats. That's what he brings to the table every single time. He checked every box in this movie, from the accent to the mannerisms and the emotion he oozed throughout the scenes, and in which he had to pour his heart out about his immigrant story, as well as in the very heart-tugging scene when he believes his wife is about to meet her demise. That scene really made me almost cry. I want to say almost because I didn't really cry during this movie. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I do cry on occasion when I watch movies. I get into it to the point that I actually cry. The entire cast is amazing. It's not just him doing the work though. Although the almost 4 hours can be discouraging when one is the type of person that cannot sit still or pay attention to what is going on, the movie is paced in a way that keeps the audience involved. Felicity Jones was incredibly grounded in her performance as well. The chemistry between her and Brody is irrefutable. Despite my zero knowledge of Hungarian, I can say that the actress sounded believable. Now let's open a bit of a discussion here. They used AI to enhance their ability to do the accent. Let's just be very honest here. They did a tremendous job regardless, because if you have to learn how to pronounce words in a different language, a language that you don't speak, it is commendable to learn. By the same token, I have to say, as somebody who speaks multiple languages and somebody that has been teaching languages for 35 years, you cannot achieve pronunciation that is believable as that language that you're speaking. Like, you cannot sound like you are Brazilian after 6 months learning the language, even after 3-4 years, unless of course you learn that language as a child. Then you can get pronunciation and cadence and fluency that is close to that of a native speaker. So no, they could not have achieved that without AI. Nonetheless, they had to achieve a certain level of fluency, at least in delivering the lines, for the AI to match. You can go and Google how they did this. Okay. The Brutalist AI. People got mad at it and said he didn't deserve the Oscar for that reason. I wouldn't go that far. The Brutalist AI accent. Why is the Brutalist sparking controversy or controversy? For its use of AI. So they used AI to make the accents sound more believable. And like I said, as somebody who has been teaching languages for 35 years, it is virtually impossible for somebody to learn a language, any language, after you're an adult and then sound like you come from the country where that language is spoken. I've had a lot of debates with different people who are not in the business. For instance, if you're a painter or if you are a mechanic or if you are a doctor, you have a different profession and not languages, you are not going to know what I'm talking about. I've seen people achieve fluency in languages after years of studies. Sometimes they became so fluent and so good at the language that you would think they had been studying their whole lives. Still, they did not sound like they came from a country where that language was spoken. So you couldn't expect the actors to sound perfect, to sound Hungarian, right? For them to sound Hungarian, they had to use AI. But still, let's give them the credit where it's due. They did a tremendous job anyway. So, granted the direction of the movie acknowledged that AI was used to enhance this believability of their linguistic patterns, it was still quite impressive to watch them. If there were a time when AI could be used without being detrimental to actors' jobs, this was definitely it. Because they still got to be in the movie, right? They weren't substituted for AI, because that would have sucked. That would have been just horrible. But that's not what was done. They were on the screen and they had Hungarian people match their voices, to their speech, to their patterns, to the cadence of the speech of somebody who is Hungarian, to make sure that they would sound Hungarian. That's it. But they were still in the movie. It was still them. It was not actors being substituted by AI, which I think is what people are afraid of, right? I went into this afternoon's movie session waiting to know who the Brutalist was and why he was called that. When I came out, I had learned much more than I was initially aware of. The Brutalist takes the audience through history as it is chronologically set in the 50s and 60s and brings them into the 80s at the very end. I had never heard of Marcel Lahus Brewer, but researching for this review, I came across an article that suggested he might be the inspiration for the fictional character Laszlo Tóth. I was 100% thinking he must have really existed because the movie created that fantasy for me. This is, at the end of the day, the reason why we go to the movies, to live through the fantasies writers, directors, producers, and especially actors create for us, isn't it? Some of these fantasy scenarios can be hard to watch, such as the rape scene in which Laszlo is raped by Harrison Van Buren. Again, I thought that had actually happened. I thought they were telling a story of something that had happened. But as it turns out, it is all fiction. That took me by surprise, it really did. I left the theater wanting to find out about the characters and the parallels of the story with reality. Other than that, I do not think that any other emotions were elicited in me. This is not a movie I will watch again. This is not to say that everyone will agree with me. In 1997, I watched The English Patient and really disliked it. My fiance at the time and everyone else I knew at the time who watched it thought it was a fantastic piece of cinema. Therefore, I do not wish anyone who is coming to the end of this review to not watch it just because I'm saying that. That is not something I would watch again. Go watch it and make up your own mind. The Brutalist is very well crafted, and it is no wonder it won so many awards. Please subscribe and watch my other reviews. I'm going to do one for The Last Showgirl. I'm also going to do one for The Goonies and Footloose. Weird, because I hadn't really watched those movies before, but now I have. So I hope you'll like the review. Keep watching my channel. There are lots of interesting things here. Interviews with people of all walks of life, including actors, actresses, writers, teachers, people from different countries who speak with different accents. Just go and look for interviews for educational purposes. It's a playlist I created. Subscribe.